Alright, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. It's me, Addy, again, and I hope you guys are doing alright. Recently, I completed Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin over on Twitch, and so I thought I'd make this quick review video on it. Now, Stranger of Paradise is a game that I had been meaning to play for a while now, but was never really able to get around to because of all the hype around Elden Ring, which I was playing at the time. And I had honestly forgotten that Stranger of Paradise even existed until a member of my community reminded me of it not long ago. And so it was then that I decided to give the game a shot. And man, I've got to say, this is definitely one of the most interesting games that I have ever played. I was both equal parts excited and indifferent going into this one because, on the one hand, I was eager to try this out because of all the chaos memes. But on the other, I hadn't heard great things about this game's writing, and visually, man, I had not heard or seen great things about the visuals of this game. Visually, this looked like it was something crapped out of the year 2007, I'm not even kidding. But now that I'm at the point where I've completed the game, I can say that while most of these things are true, I actually ended up enjoying it way more than I thought I would, so let's talk about that in today's review. So going right into Strangers of Paradise, I noticed two glaring problems. First, the graphics were bad, and there's absolutely no arguing against that point. This game's visuals are severely outdated, with blurry edges on everything that completely lack any aliasing, muddy looking textures, and awful draw distances. It is especially insulting to your eyeballs when this game unironically thinks it has the greatest visuals in the world and encourages you to gaze your eyes upon its landscapes and set pieces which look absolutely terrible.
And bring the world once more into light.
What are those graphics? Do I need new glasses? What in the fuck am I looking at? What is that? What is that is that even a castle? Is that a castle with shoe shine applied to it with a sponge? The other thing is the narrative. This game opens up with a cutscene that paints it as the most edgy Final Fantasy to date, which does hold true for the rest of the experience. I mean, hell, this is the first FF game to have its characters dropping F-bombs left and right, but the writing here is so laughably bad that it's almost impossible to take anything that's happening in this game seriously. For a majority of this game, I found myself cracking jokes at how needlessly edgy this game's main character Jack was, and I couldn't at all find myself invested in the game's narrative about saving the world from darkness or whatever.
My mission is to kill chaos. That's all I know.
There it
Me
is.
too.
Chaos.
Good.
Now, maybe I would have enjoyed it were it not for the countless jokes and memes surrounding Jack having the Guinness World Record for the biggest hate boner in the world, for this thing called Chaos, where he just constantly talks about some unknown entity called Chaos that he so desperately wants to massacre. I swear, the second word of every sentence in this game is chaos. Chaos, 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 chaos. But I doubt it. And on top of all this, the main party lacks any sort of chemistry, which is really unfortunate because one of the best parts about the well-written Final Fantasy games is when you have a cast of compelling characters, all of whom have very interesting dynamics. But here, there's sadly none of that. Now, if I were to rate the game right now just based off of everything I've said so far, I would probably give it around a 5 out of 10. The only reason it wouldn't go to a 4 is because of how this is one of those games that's so bad that it's actually kind of fun to experience. Kind of like that one movie, The Room, if you've seen it. But here's why I ultimately am going to rate this game a little higher than a 5. And that's because of the combat. Thankfully, despite the shitty graphics and narrative, the combat in this game is extremely fun. So much so that I actually went ahead and recommended the game to my brother, and I would recommend it to you as well. Now, this game was made by Team Ninja, the masterminds behind Nioh 1 and 2, which in my opinion are the greatest Souls-like games not made by From Software. The gameplay in those were fantastic, and Stranger of Paradise is absolutely no exception here. Team Ninja have once again managed to design an incredibly satisfying gameplay experience here that retains the same vast build variety, as well as the addicting hack-and-slash combat of the Nioh games. And what's more is that Stranger of Paradise does all this while adopting other classic gameplay aspects of the Final Fantasy series as well, such as the jobs system from Final Fantasy Tactics, which is absolutely one of my all-time favorite FF games. This game has all the classic FF jobs like your run-of-the-mill mages, knights, brawlers, lancers, and more. But on top of those base classes, you can unlock more advanced classes as you play, which is really cool. And the vast number of jobs there are in this game allow for so many different fun and unique playstyles and weapons for you to experiment with, all of which have their own unique specials, armor sets, finishers, and more associated with them. It's just really satisfying to viciously mow through all the enemies and creatures with the various styles this game has to offer, and this is definitely the game's greatest strength here. Now I also want to take a second to note this game's gimmick during combat, which is really well done. And that is this hella fun parrying mechanic where you have this soul shield of sorts, where you can absorb enemy attacks and then use them back on them. One of my favorite moments was when I was fighting the familiar Cactuar enemy from the previous Final Fantasy games, and he used his 1000 Needles attack on me, which is a pretty iconic attack of his. And now I was able to absorb this attack and use the attack back on him, which was pretty dang amazing and definitely convinced me that this game was worth seeing through to the end. And since we're on the topic of enemies, I think that they were designed and implemented here very, very well, and the bosses are absolutely the highlight of that. Barring the graphical quality, the visual direction and the gameplay design of these bosses were done masterfully, which comes as no surprise given how well they were done in Nioh 2 as well. Fun boss fights is definitely something that I'm happy to say Team Ninja has consistently succeeded in doing, and I really walked away from this experience having the most fun in this game with the boss fights. The music during these fights is dope as fuck too. And that's the other thing, the music. I personally really enjoyed the soundtrack of this game. It was a perfect mix-up of genres familiar to the Final Fantasy franchise, ranging from kick-ass heavy metal tunes to very soothing piano melodies. And some songs here are even direct remasters of beloved tracks from the previous games. One notable example of this, which I absolutely freaking loved, is the Evil Forest theme from Final Fantasy IX, which I lost my shit upon recognizing and hearing that. Oh, hell yeah, man. I love it. I think my respect for this game, despite the shitty visuals and goofy story and characters, shot up by tenfold. So hell yeah, man. Love the soundtrack here. Now, the one thing that I wasn't a huge fan of amidst all these areas that I thought were done very well in this game was the constant loot spamming. Now, this is not a new pet peeve of mine, as it's something that was there in the Nioh games as well. It's the constant dropping of a gazillion and one different pieces of gear upon killing each and every enemy. And while it's really cool to keep on accumulating all these new pieces of gear in these games, especially considering how snazzy they look and what their stats and affinities are like and stuff like that, they tend to fill up your inventory storage very quickly, of which you don't even have that much maximum storage capacity to begin with. And a lot of what you pick up in this game is just a carbon copy, but with slightly better stats of 101 pieces of the same gear that you've picked up earlier. Now, this in turn causes a majority of your playtime to go into dismantling so much gear just to save inventory space, which feels like a massive chore. Playing Team Ninja games in this regard makes me realize why I love games like Bloodborne so much. It's because each and every piece of gear you pick up in that game is completely unique and mechanically original. Everything you pick up feels significant and worth experimenting with at some point during your playthrough, and add to that the fact that they don't take up storage space at all. In this game, I wasn't excited at any point when I was collecting new gear, and at no point did I even bother to customize my shit manually. I just auto-optimized my character, dismantled the crap I didn't need, and called it a day. Which again is unfortunate since so much of what you collect in this game looks so cool, but isn't at all unique and just serves to do absolutely nothing at the end of the day besides add more to your max storage. But anywho, man, I didn't mind this too much. It was just a small pet peeve of mine. But yeah, anywho, rant about storage over. Now we're back to the point where if I were to rate Stranger of Paradise, at this point, I would give it a 6. It's slightly above average because of its satisfying gameplay and music, both of which make it very easy for you to look past its visuals and story. But here's the thing. The story towards the end actually gets pretty good. Towards the end of this game, all those missing character dynamics for the first 90% really begin to come through, and the plot actually begins to get very interesting. Stranger of Paradise is marketed as an odd sort of retelling or remake for the very first Final Fantasy game, and the end really starts to clarify what the game truly is to the first Final Fantasy in some really well executed story beats and twists. And all of a sudden, I actually found myself caring about these characters and the story. It was almost jarring because up until that point, I really didn't give a shit. The game didn't do anything to make me interested. But the final act definitely grabbed me and finally started to make me sort of like these characters and the overall narrative. How this game relates to Final Fantasy I is a twist that is executed in an extremely clever way, and I do appreciate the writing there. It's just a shame that I can't say the same for the rest of the game, and I really do wish that the rest of this game had the same energy and writing that the final act did. But yeah, that's that. At this point, because of how satisfied I walked away feeling at the end, I'm actually going to bump up my rating for Final Fantasy Origin to a nice 7 out of 10. It does have some shitty visuals and big storytelling problems for a majority of the experience, but the incredibly satisfying gameplay is actually enough to allow you to look past those problems and absolutely carries the game in my opinion. So if you're looking for something just to kill time with, and chaos with, then Stranger of Paradise Final Fantasy Origin is a pretty good time. I would definitely say that you should wait for this game to get a discount though, because oof, the $70 price tag is rough and I don't think it's justified. Anywho guys, I hope you enjoyed the review. I'm likely going to be playing Hollow Knight next, so if you do want to join in on the fun, do feel free to check me out at twitch.tv/irritableindian. I would be happy to see you there. Follow me there, subscribe to me here. I would greatly appreciate that. And as always, keep on keeping on.